I still remember the market trip that changed everything. It was one of those clear Saturday mornings, the kind where the sun shone just brightly enough to make you squint but not enough to feel like it was cooking you. Mama and I had spent the night before carefully planning our shopping list. Yam, rice, tomatoes, onions, meat, Mama said, ticking items off her old, worn notebook. Keen, add oil and salt to the list. The one we have left won't last through the week. I quickly wrote it down, feeling proud to be part of the process. Handling money felt important, like I was being trusted with something grown up. When Mama handed me the folded wad of Naira notes, it felt heavier in my pocket than it looked. Not because of its weight, but because of what it meant. The market was its usual lively chaos. Sellers shouting out their prices, carts weaving through the crowd, smells of fresh produce mixing with dried fish and spices. It was noisy and alive. Mama and I moved through the stalls like we always did, dodging carts and greeting familiar faces. But this week, something was different. We stopped at the yam seller first. Mama's friend, Auntie Ifioma, ran that stall. She was always cheerful and quick to greet Mama with a joke. But today, her face looked tense, like she already knew the conversation wouldn't go well. "How much is yam today, Ifioma?" Mama asked, her voice confident, as though expecting good news. 2,500 for one tuber, Auntie Ifioma said, her voice quiet. The number hit me like a slap. Mama's eyebrows shot up in shock. "What? Last week it was 1,800. Ifioma sighed and gave an apologetic shrug. "Sister, things are hard. Transport costs have gone up, and the farmers are spending more on fuel. Even I'm struggling to make anything from these yams." Mama let out a deep sigh. We had budgeted 4,000 naira for yams, expecting to buy 2 large tubers and still have change. But now, 2 tubers would use up all that money, and even that might not be enough. Still, yam was a staple in our meals, so Mama reluctantly handed over the money. "Let's move on," she said, sliding the yams into our basket. Next, we went to the tomato seller. Mama usually bargained like an expert, her sharp words cutting through any resistance. But today, even her skill couldn't bring the price down. A small basket of tomatoes, once 1,500 naira, was now 2,200. Onions were worse. The tiny bulbs, which didn't even look fresh, were selling for prices that made Mama shake her head in disbelief. We trudged through the market, our list shrinking while the weight of the money in my pocket grew lighter. By the time we reached the meat seller, I could see the frustration building in Mama's face. "How much for 1 kilo of beef?" she asked. 5,000, the butcher replied, slicing through the air as casually as he sliced through the meat. Mama's grip tightened on the basket. "Last week, it was 4,200. "Oh, madam," the butcher said with a laugh, "last week is last week." We walked away without buying any meat. Mama didn't say much, but her silence said everything. I wanted to speak, to say something that might lift her spirits, but I didn't know what to say. By the time we left the market, we had barely half the items on our list. No oil, no salt, no meat. The basket felt heavier than it should, not because of what it carried, but because of what it lacked. On the way home, I finally spoke. "Mama, why didn't we plan better?" She stopped walking and turned to me, her eyes tired but focused. "Keen, we did plan. The problem is that prices are rising faster than we can keep up. It's not just about making a list, it's about knowing what to plan for." Her words stayed with me all the way home, rolling around in my head like a puzzle I couldn't solve. When we got back, Mama unpacked the groceries in the kitchen. I noticed how slowly she moved, as if the weight of the day was pressing down on her shoulders. She opened the cupboard to put the food away, and I saw how bare the shelves looked. We'd been stretching what we had for weeks, but now there was no stretching left to do. Dinner that night was simple. No meat, no fried plantain, just yam and tomato stew. Mama tried to keep the mood light, humming the soft tune she always did while cooking. But the air felt heavy, and I couldn't shake the thought that we could have done something differently. After dinner, I sat in my room, staring at the ceiling and thinking about everything that had happened. I couldn't understand why our plan hadn't worked. We'd made a list, counted the money carefully, what else was there to do? I didn't know it yet, but Mama wasn't done teaching me. The real lesson was just around the corner. Later that evening, as the sky turned orange with the setting sun, Mama called me to the small wooden table in our sitting room. She had her notebook open, the same one we used to make our shopping list. But now, it looked different. The simple list of items and prices had new columns, scribbles, and circles around some numbers. "Kin," she said gently, "do you know why today didn't go as planned?" I thought for a moment. Because everything was too expensive, I guessed. She nodded. "Yes, but that's not the whole story. The real problem is that we didn't prepare for what might go wrong. Life doesn't always follow your plan, and if you don't leave room for surprises, you'll struggle." I frowned, trying to understand. "But we had a plan, didn't we?" Mama smiled, turning the notebook to face me. She pointed at the list. This was a plan for what we needed, but it didn't consider what might happen. A good plan isn't just about what you want, it's also about what might change. She flipped to a fresh page and drew 3 columns. At the top, she wrote 3 words: needs, wants, and extras. "This," she said, tapping the page, "is how we'll plan from now on." Her explanation was simple. Needs are the things we can't do without, like food, water, and school fees. These come first. I nodded. That made sense. Wants are things we like but don't have to buy, like snacks or going to the movies. This can wait if money is tight. I leaned closer, paying attention. "And extras," she said, smiling, "are for surprises, when prices go up, or something unexpected happens. We save a little here to protect ourselves." Her words felt like a light bulb turning on in my head. We hadn't been planning for the unexpected at all. Mama showed me how it worked. If we divide our money into these 3 parts before we spend it, we'll always have something to fall back on. It helps us stay in control, even when life throws us surprises. She handed me the pen. "Now, you try." I stared at the blank space under her columns. "What should I write?" "Start with how much we'll have next week," she said. "Then decide how to divide it into these 3 parts." I wrote the numbers carefully, asking for help when I got confused. By the time I finished, the system made sense to me. It wasn't just about spending, it was about protecting ourselves from things we couldn't predict. That week, we tested the system at the market. When the tomato seller raised her price again, we adjusted. We bought fewer tomatoes and used a little from the extras column to fill the gap. It wasn't easy, but it worked. By the end of the month, something surprising happened. For the first time in a while, we had money left over. Mama used it to buy a small tin of powdered milk, something we hadn't had in weeks. That evening, as we shared a cup of tea, I felt proud, like we'd accomplished something big. Since then, I've kept my own notebook, just like Mama. Every time I earn or spend money, I think about those 3 columns: needs, wants, and extras. It's a simple system, but it taught me a powerful lesson. Being ready for life's surprises is just as important as knowing what you want.